Okay, thank you guys for joining in this second session on the Lajjitadi Avasthas. And we had completed the first session where, towards the end of the session, we had looked about the natural relationships between between each graha. We did not speak in details about why these are friendly, why certain grahas are friendly or why certain grahas are inimical towards each other. And that is something that is not required in this topic. Okay. But before we actually take a deep dive into the Lajjitadi Avastha, we have to study a bit about Shadbala. Okay. And why do we need Shadbala is because Parashara mentioned in the BPHS, Parashara says that it is the main source of strength for any particular graha. Okay. BPHS mentions explicitly that Shadbala is very important when it comes to judging planetary strength. And we have to quantify this Lajjitadi Avastha with Shadbala, so that we know when it will be utilized once we start dealing with the Lajjitadi Avastha influences. Okay. And if one has gone through the Brahat Parashara Hora Shastra, Shadbala is given a very extensive and dedicated chapter. Okay, all the calculations are mentioned. Okay, and it's not necessary to know the calculations because the software nowadays does it for you. But if you want to go through it, you can obviously go through. All right. Now, Shadbala is important because it tells us the overall as well as exact strength of a planet. Okay, and it is also the most comprehensive strength of any astrological system. Okay, and it presents many incredible insights into the workings and behaviors of an individual, right? And Shadbala can be found for all the saptagrahas. Rahu and Ketu are not included in this scheme. I mentioned in the first class too that we'll be focusing or limiting our discussion mainly on the 7 visible planets. Okay, so maybe later on we can have a course on Shadbala, right? Because that is very, very important to understand the psychology of an individual. Okay. Now, the Lajjitadi Avasthas, they work directly with Shadbala to reveal the overall level of fulfillment that a planet achieves. Okay. And, a planet is all about its habits. Okay. What are the good habits of a planet? What are the bad habits of a planet? How does a planet feel fulfilled? Okay. We had a detailed discussion on this fulfillment part, right? So all planets they have their Shadbala value as a base value for the for the fulfillment of their necessary activities. Okay, and if the Shadbala of a planet is less than the required minimum value for the planet, I'll come to the values shortly. All right, then the graha whose Shadbala is less than the required minimum value, such a graha is not able to fulfill its responsibilities to a certain to a level which is necessary for well-being and fulfillment. Okay, the graha does, you can say that the graha is powerless to fulfill its responsibilities. In that case, we have to lift up the graha, and that can be done by using mantras or tantras or yantras. Okay, so we're not going into the remedial part as of for now. Okay, but then we know that that the chart of an individual is an interaction between all the navagrahas. Okay, no planet can work in isolation. Nowadays there is a lot of effort made to say, okay, this is the best planet in the chart, this is the worst planet in the chart. But we have to understand that all the planets, they work in certain tandem. Okay, they work in a tandem. So since no planet works in isolation, since every planet works in cooperation with the other planets, so a planet's ability to fulfill its required activities varies dramatically in respect to the planets influencing it, in accordance with the principle of Lajjitadi Avasthas. Okay, what I mean by that is, if a planet is in a favorable Lajjitadi Avastha, it gains strength, and if it is in an unfavorable Avastha, it loses strength. Okay, and these Lajjitadi Avastha influences are always, are always in an up and down motion throughout life. And what influences, what influences this avastha? It is the dasha. Okay. I always tell my students, if you're learning astrology, you have to, you have to learn about two dashas. Okay, at least two dashas you have to learn about. You have to get familiar with Vimshottari Dasha. Okay. But you also have to learn another Dasha. It could be the Naisargika Dasha. It could be the Chara Dasha of Gemini. Okay. It could be the Kala Chakra Dasha. But you have to learn at least two Dashas to, to be able to make predictions. Okay. But anyways, so a planet can be influenced by, by several avasthas, but we have to note that not all of them are cumulative. Okay. So as an astrologer, you must take great care in examining each avastha. Okay. And the first and the easiest examination of a planet is to simply examine its shadbala, the value of its shadbala. Okay. So the rule is, if the shadbala value is less than minimum required, then it will not be able to fulfill its responsibilities completely. Okay. So this is the minimum value of shadbalas that are there for all the planets, and this is in accordance to the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. So for Sun, the minimum value is 390. For Moon, it is 360. For Mars, it is 300. For Mercury, it is 420. For Jupiter, it is again 390. For Venus, it is 330. And for Saturn, it is 300. Okay. So Mercury, being the tiniest, it requires more Shadbala. Okay. And the point being, if you commit the minimum required Shadbalas to memory, you will get a good idea as to how and when these values will be utilized when it comes to judging the Lajjitadi Avastha influences on the grahas. Okay, so again, just repeating it for your convenience. The minimum value for the Shadbala of the Sun is 390. For the Moon, it is 360. For Mars, it is 300. For Mercury, it is 420. For Jupiter, it is 390. For Venus, it is 330. And for Saturn, it is 300. Okay. And then, while studying Lajjitadi Avasthas, we also require to know aspects. Okay. And we are not considering Rashi aspects. All aspects that we will consider are planetary aspects. Okay. And they will be measured out from a value of 0 to 60. Okay. So I'll come to the aspect part later on. Okay. Now we actually have to look at the role of planets. Okay, what is the role of each individual planet in the horoscope? Okay, and we are looking at from a general perspective, not from a specific perspective. Okay, we are looking for a generalized perspective, and each as I said, these roles will vary as per the Shadbala as well as per the aspects. Okay. If a sun has a particular role and that sun is getting aspected by Saturn, then obviously that role will be diverted to somewhere else. Okay. So you have to understand each and everything that we come across. Okay. So when we come to roles of the planets, we have to understand that each planet has a role to fulfill in order to provide the individual with a sense of fulfillment, happiness, and health. Okay. And the planet attempts to fulfill this role by focusing on the other planets. So, depending on the planets focused upon, a particular planet will cause an experience to the focused upon planet that is more or less fulfilling to the individual. Okay. For example, say, Jupiter is aspecting Mercury. In that case, Jupiter will cause an experience upon Mercury. Okay. Which is more or less fulfilling to the individual, and that will depend upon the Shadbala of Mercury. Okay. And in that case, when such a focus is made, okay, when such a focus is made, then the planets that focus upon another planet will dictate the ability of that planet to fulfill its role. All right. And a planet focuses upon the planet in its Rashi. Okay. A planet can also focus with its planetary aspects to any degree. A planet can also focus or put its focus on the planet with whom it shares a Rashi. And the planet can also put its focus with which it shares a the focus can also be put on a planet with which it shares a planetary lord. Okay, so what do I mean by this? For example, let's take the planet Jupiter. Okay, let's take the planet of Jupiter. So let's say, Jupiter owns two rashis here. So Jupiter will always focus on those planets which are placed in Sagittarius and Pisces. Okay, and then Jupiter will also focus on those planets which is being aspected by it. Okay, Jupiter will also focus on those planets which are being aspected by it. No aspects, no planets in the aspect, no problem. Okay, and then suppose this Jupiter is in Cancer. Okay, suppose this Jupiter is in Cancer. In that case, and let's say Mars is also in Cancer. In that case, Jupiter will also focus on Mars. Okay, and finally, Jupiter will also focus on those planets which are with which it has co-lords. For example, the sign of Sagittarius. Yes, the sign of Sagittarius, it has a co-lord which is Venus. Okay, because Venus exalts. The sign of Pisces has a co-lord Venus because Venus exalts in Pisces, right? So Jupiter will also focus on Venus. All right. Some people say that Sagittarius is the Mula Trikorna of Ketu. Okay, so Jupiter will also focus on Ketu in that case. Okay, but as I said, we'll put the nodes out of the ambit of Lajjitadi Avastha. All right. So, is it clear what I'm trying to say on where and how a planet focuses on the other planets? If not, we'll take another example. Okay, I'll just take another example for your convenience. Say, for example, we are focusing on, Capricorn ascendant, and let's say we are looking at Mercury, which is placed in, say, Gemini. Okay, and then let's say Sun and Jupiter are also placed in Gemini. Okay, Mercury will focus, and then let's say Saturn is placed in Sagittarius. Okay, so what happens? This Mercury, it will focus number one. Okay, it will focus number one on Saturn by its aspect because it is looking at Saturn directly by its seventh aspect. Saturn is in Sagittarius, so Mercury will focus on Saturn. Okay, Mercury will also focus on any planet that is placed in Virgo and Gemini. Okay, so Mercury will be, because there is no planet in, say, let's say there is no planet in Virgo, so no problem with that. But there are two planets in Gemini, so Mercury will focus on Sun and Jupiter. Now Mercury is sharing Gemini with Sun and Jupiter, so the focus remains the same. Okay, and then what is the, Mercury owns two signs, okay, in Gemini as well as Virgo. Okay, in that case, Mercury will also focus on itself because Mercury gets exalted in Virgo. Okay, so that is how the focus thing works. So if I put it in another way, what I can say is the planets that focus on a particular planet will support or disrupt the planet in the fulfillment of its responsibilities. Okay, while the planets that a particular planet is focused on reveal the strategy, whether healthy or unhealthy, of the planet to fulfill its responsibilities. Okay. And between these two things, the total ability, or the lack of ability of a planet to fulfill its responsibilities is indicated. Okay. And according to Jyotish, the human organism has 4 bodies. Okay. The spiritual body, the emotional body, which is very self-conscious, the energy body, and the physical body. Okay. Now, the spiritual body is not truly a body. Okay. It is a body. All right. It is because, it exists for a time and then it perishes or is just cast aside. What do I mean by this? By getting cast aside. The spiritual body, as I said, it's not a body. Why? Because you have a certain idea of who you are spiritually at each and every point of your life. For example, as a child, your idea of spirituality was very different from what your idea of spirituality is right now. Okay, as a child, I used to do a lot of, murti puja. That means I used to worship idols, right? But as I have, so that was a spiritual self of mine, okay, in my teenage days, right? But now, as I have moved into astrology, into tantra, into yoga, I realize that everything is within us. So that body of spirituality which I had as an 18-year-old is no longer here with me. So I've discarded that away. So that is the meaning of of the spiritual body getting discarded or getting cast aside. Okay. And the spiritual body is rather a spark of God consciousness that is ever existing. And this spark is encased in a body of self consciousness which relates emotionally, and we call this as the emotional body. Okay. And the self conscious, emotionally centered body is itself encased in an energetic body which directly creates and affects the physical body. Okay. And in the physical body, the energetic body becomes trapped or becomes encased. Okay. Yoga will call it as the panchakosha. Okay. The spiritual body is known as the Anandamaya kosha. The energy body is known as the emotional body is known as the Manomaya kosha. The energetic body is known as the Pranamaya kosha, and the physical body is known as the Annamaya kosha. Okay. There is another body called the Vijnanamaya kosha, which astrology does not look into. Okay. But anyways, since we are doing it at a level of Vedic astrology, so I can say that there are 4 levels to the human organism, and each planet has a role to fulfill on each level. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that each planet does not have only one simple role assigned to it. It has 4 roles to fulfill. Okay. And a planet always attempts to fulfill these roles simultaneously. But then some roles are much more difficult to fulfill due to disorders that may be present to the inspired knowing of the spiritual, or to the disorders of the emotional, energetic, or physical bodies. And we have spoken about what diseases, what energy diseases, what emotional diseases, and so on. Okay. So any doubt till here before we go into the role of the planets? Any doubt till here? Okay, great. So now we look at the role of the sun. Okay. So the sun's role is to creatively co-create. Okay. It is the agency of inspiration. And it inspires the native, that is, to make the world a more wonderful and healthy place to exist. Okay. And planets which focus upon the sun, they affect the sun's ability to live an inspired and creative life. Okay. And the planets upon which the sun focuses are those which the sun focuses its creative powers upon. For example, say sun is focusing on Saturn. In that case, for the native, Saturn also becomes a creative planet. Okay. Sun is the creator of your resources. Yes. Moon, right? The moon's role is to provide self-nourishment and the continuation of healthy life for renewal and adaptation. Okay. And those planets which focus upon the moon, they impact the moon's ability for self-nourishment, for renewal, and for adaptation. Okay. And the planets upon which the moon focuses are those through which the moon attempts to be nourished. Yes. And renewed, and those which the moon attempts to adopt. Okay. How to know whether you have a good moon or a bad moon in the chart? You have to look at your adaptability. How far and how much can you adapt to a new role, to a new situation? That is the role of the moon. Okay. The role of Mars is to exert energy so as to become and remain healthy, protected, and fulfilled. Okay. And planets which focus upon Mars affect the ability of Mars to productively exert its energy through effective strategy, discipline, and common sense in order to become and remain healthy, protected and fulfilled. And the planets upon which Mars focuses are those that Mars focuses his energy towards in an attempt to do something of value. So Mars is that planet through which the individual exerts what is there in their consciousness. Okay. Just take a break for a couple of minutes and we will continue with the other planets. Okay. Now we'll look at Mercury's role, and the role of Mercury is to create a life that works. Okay. A life of balanced fulfillment. And how does Mercury play its role? By investigating through research. Okay. By listening and communicating, by suggesting the individual to work in different ways, okay, to identify the possibilities and resources that exist in their lives in order to make the most out of their lives. Okay. And the funny thing about life is that most of the things in life that don't work. Okay. And you can only find out by being inquisitive what works and what does not work. So the planets that focus upon Mercury, they affect Mercury's ability to research and discover successful methods and paths. Okay. And planets that Mercury focuses upon are those through which Mercury attempts to find the best possible path. Okay. Next, we have Jupiter's role. And the role of Jupiter is to taste and manifest the indwelling virtues of wisdom and joy. Okay. So this, you have to taste the virtues with which you are born with. All right. Because only when you taste your own virtues, only then can you dwell in joy. And the inner virtue is manifested as a husband, okay, children, a life of goodness and purpose. Okay. So planets that focus upon Jupiter, they determine Jupiter's ability to inwardly deepen wisdom and joy and to manifest virtue as a beautiful, concrete example of their inner virtue. Okay. And the planets that Jupiter focuses upon, they determine that through which Jupiter attempts to deepen the wisdom and joy that is only available within, and which is the source of any manifestation of goodness. Okay. Now we come to the role of Venus. So Venus' role is to it's to healthily obtain necessary fulfillment and nourishment from the world in a way that is not damaging to the organism or to others. Okay. So what does that mean? It means to make healthy choices, to let that in which which is good for the organism. And when you do this, it increases your self-worth, right? And what is self-worth? Self-worth is the measurement by which we allow other things into our lives. Okay. So low self-worth will allow low things, and healthy self-worth will allow only healthy things. Okay. And what does this ultimately mean? It means to find fulfillment and nourishment naturally, as only natural living is healthy. And for this reason, Venus rules the natural living. It rules the ojas, it rules the virya, right? If somebody takes away the virya out from your body, you die. Okay. So the planets that focus upon Venus, they affect Venus, the self-worth of Venus, and thus the ability of Venus to make healthy choices. And what do those healthy choices do? They provide true nourishment and fulfillment without, disrupting the organism or the life in the process. And planets that Venus focuses upon are those which Venus apprises as favorable or unfavorable to the organism. For example, if such a planet is favorably appraised, then Venus will attempt to benefit from an external form of that planet. And if the planet is unfavorably appraised, then Venus will refrain from letting it into the life of the individual. Okay, that is the role of Venus. And how perfectly Venus is playing its role will depend on the Lajjitadi Avastha of Venus. Okay. Now, the role of Saturn is to promote physical survival and health of the organism. And what is physical survival? It simply revolves around the survival of the body with which the ego is fully identified. So, if you consider this extension, so Saturn's role has the responsibility of promoting the survival of the ego, because without the body, the ego dies. Okay. And the planets that focus upon Saturn, they affect the ability of Saturn to survive and live a healthy life that is free from mental, emotional, energetic, and physical disease. Okay. And the planets that Saturn focuses on are those of which something must be lost. For example, if Saturn is focusing on the sun, then you'll lose something related to your father. Okay. Maybe, you have lost the love of your father, or maybe, your father has lost his health after your birth, and so on. Okay. So each planet has specific planets that support its ability to fulfill its role, as I said, and other planets that disrupt this ability to fulfill its role. And then there are others which neither support nor disrupt. Okay. What are those planets? The planets that are that are neutral to each other. Okay. So similarly, each planet can make a healthy or unhealthy or a mediocre attempt to fulfill its role depending upon the planets that it influences. And the rules by which such healthy and fulfilling and unhealthy and unfulfilling strategies are determined are the Lajjitadi Avasthas. Okay. So they will help you to determine which strategies are healthy and fulfilling, and also which strategies are unhealthy and unfulfilling. Okay. So stop till here today, and we'll continue with this in the next class. Do you have any doubts? Okay, I think it's clear. All right then. Thank you for joining in. I'll see you on Saturday for the Kala Sarpa class. Namaste. Om Gurave Namaha.